Do you believe in witchcraft? Do you believe in demon possession? Do you believe there are people with supernatural powers that can bring harm to people? Do you believe that there's evil in our world, our country today, whose purpose is to destroy good? Richard Flint, and yes, I believe in all the above. So, welcome to Let's Talk Human Behavior. And this is a discussion time committed to helping you stretch your thinking through thought provoking discussions. But maybe none as thought provoking as the discussion we're going to have today. So, do you believe there are evil forces in our world today that are seeking to bring self destruction to people? I do. Our discussion today is going to be about the occult, about witchcraft, about demon possession. Many years ago, I taught a course where I compared the teachings of the Bible to the teachings of the Satanic Bible. And yes, there is a Satanic Bible. So let me be upfront. I believe in the world of demonic power. I could share stories with you about demonic situations where things happen that to this day I couldn't explain to you. Let me also say to you that I believe as there is the Trinity of good, God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I also believe there is a trinity of evil made up of Satan, the devil, and his army of demons. And this is the foundation for my teaching on living either outside in or inside out. Because outside in, you expose yourself to the world and the world controlling you. And then inside out, you have a foundation of belief, trust, and faith that allows you to live from today to tomorrow. I met my guest today through her reaching out to me via the internet. When she sent me a connection invite, we chatted and I learned about her former life, where she lived under demonic control. Now, like many of you, in the beginning, I was a little skeptical. But as I read her book, my mind said, you need to share her with your audience. Her name is Annetta Caldwell, and her book about her journey is entitled Caught. Now, before I fully introduce her to you, I want to read a little bit from her book, Caught. So listen. Cars are everywhere. Horns are blaring, and it's packed and everyone is busy. I'm right in the middle of nightlife. Billy, Stephanie, and I are talking about witchcraft and drinking blood the other night. An awful thought goes through my head. Why not drink the blood of a stranger? Looking around, I can't find anyone. The screeching of tires and yelling from pedestrians distracts me until I see him. His dark hair flows in the wind, and a leather brown jacket sits on his motorcycle. That's him. I ask him if I could drink his blood, and he says sure, without a care in the world, and he pulls out a knife and cuts his arm. I begin drinking his blood right on the spot. I begin to taste his blood, and he tastes mine. And then we switch, and my friend Stephanie does the same thing. So, Annetta, welcome to Let's Talk Human Behavior.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
So, I'm going to ask a question that I think a lot of people will ask. Is your story fact or fiction?
It's fact.
You sure?
Yeah, because I did all that and wrote it down.
All right. Before we get into some questions, I'd like for you to share with your audience your story.
Okay, so my story starts back to when I was about 3 years old. And when I was about 3, that's when I experienced some sexual abuse in my home. And it lasted until I was about 12 years old. And during that time, I was very broken and I was looking for love outside of my home. And so friends are kind of where I was finding things. And so when I go forward to like middle school, that's when I started experiencing a lot of rejection. And there was a time when I was really trying to be with the cool kids. And so I was changing everything about me. I even went out with a boy to try to get in the group. And I broke up with him and after an hour at a party. So it didn't last very long. And when after that happened, the next day they actually super glued my fingers and my feet together to like have revenge on me for breaking up with him. And at school, everything started changing even more. Like all the cool kids hated me, and my old friends didn't like me because I was leaving them for the popular kids. So I was searching for acceptance and love, and these 2 girls came into my life that were new into the school, and they were really big into heroin and cocaine, and they were only, like I said, 8th grade, but they had a pretty troubled past, and that's how they were dealing with things. And they're the ones that were introducing me to witchcraft. And so I started hanging out with them and I got into some stuff with them. And after a little while, I had a birthday party at my house. And that's kind of when the big things started happening. They invited one of their friends over to my party and she was a witch. And I didn't know, but she was like, coming to bring some pretty dark things into the party. And she actually started doing tarot readings on me and other people. So it seemed like this like fun thing, like we're gonna do tarot readings, and see what animal you are and this and that, all this crazy stuff. And after that, she's like, "Do you want to do something even more exciting?" And I was like, "Well, sure." I was very engaged with her. I was like, okay. She said, well, you need to get a Bible. And I have this other, I think it was a satanic Bible, but it was like, she's like, I have this other thing. We're going to rub them together and we're going to do some spells. And so I brought that to her. And I did feel like it was over the line, but I was still, very interested in all this. So she started rubbing them. I started rubbing them together. It felt like they were moving by themselves. And then she started doing some spells. I don't even remember exactly all that she said. But after a while, she left, and so did my other friends. And we went into my bedroom, and it looked like the poster came alive. Like it looked like the eyes were moving, and I was like, "Is this my imagination?" Like I feel super afraid. And my other friend came in, and she was like, "No, that poster looks like it's coming alive." So I freaked out. I was telling everybody that was left in the party what was happening, and there was so much fear. It was just like this fog in the room, just like fear was everywhere. And eventually she left, my friends left the next day, and I was just left with fear and left with like this feeling of just like, I don't know, it was like torment. And whenever that happened, it's like the enemy knew that I was looking for friendship and I was looking for acceptance, and I was very broken with all the abuse and growing up in an abusive home. So he was putting people in my path that were darker and darker each time. So this next group of people that I met, which was when I got to 9th grade, they were wearing all black. I actually started wearing all black. I got suicidal um, because everything that I had opened and then just all the pain that I was feeling, I began cutting myself. And also, like I said, just got really into emo and going to a lot of concerts like that. And when they took me, I finally said yes to these friends that looked like me. They started introducing me to like some other drugs. And I didn't really do a lot with those other girls. I did a little bit of stuff, but not the really heavy stuff. So I started hanging out with them, and I was drinking almost like every day at this point. Because I started 5th grade was when I started dabbling with some, with drinking and stuff. So when I started hanging out with them, we would go to parties, go to concerts, all this stuff. And then I remember one distinct night we went to have a party at my friend's house. And after a lot of people left, we went to the back room, and I guess it was like a group of 3 or 4 of us were in there, and they started talking about spirits coming and being like finding a host, right? And they were looking for somebody, and they said, "Who's willing to do it?" And I was like, "I am." And they're like, okay. And my other friend was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, that's kind of, yeah. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'll do it. So I got on the table and they did this seance and invited Satan and whatever the spirit, basically to come into me. And I remember the fear that I was feeling before was kind of on the outside. This time it was on the inside. Like I felt so afraid. I had to go outside and take a breath. And when I looked outside, I could hear almost like a cackle, and fear was so big. Like I was afraid to even be outside by myself at this point. I was like, "Oh wow, this isn't good." But instead of stopping there, I was still struggling a lot with the alcohol and with the drugs. So like another group of friends came in. And so this group that was Stephanie and the other guy that I mentioned in my book. We would hang out, like I said, we started hanging out with skinheads. We started getting really into a lot of the music, and I shaved my head. I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff with her and with that group. And one day we were at her house, and again, we were, doing drugs every weekend. And one day she pulled out a book and she was like, "Hey, Annetta, did you know that there's such thing as white witches?" Because we had been talking about witchcraft and stuff. And she goes, "Those," and I go, "Well, isn't that bad or whatever?" She's like, "No." She goes, "White witches are the good ones and the other ones are the bad ones." She said, "But there's something we have to do in order to become, white witches." And I was like, "Well, what's that?" She goes, "Well, we have to make blood oaths and we have to drink each other's blood." And so when you see that part of my book, that's when we had my other friend too. We all cut each other and we all drank each other's blood. And that was part of the pact that we made and part of becoming like real witches. And after that, that's when I like maybe a couple weeks later, I was on the road and that's when I saw that guy. And when I did that afterwards, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Because they were even like, that's a stranger. You don't even know him. And it kind of hit me a little bit like this guy could have had diseases, anything, but I still was doing that kind of stuff. I was still searching. I was still trying all kinds of stuff. And so that was kind of the biggest part that happened with the witchcraft. I started getting into crystals. I was searching for everything, and I met somebody that was like, "Oh, if crystals can help you, and this can help you," because I was always afraid, and nobody could help me really, because I was like, I was stuck, and every time that I was trying to get sober, it just wasn't working. I would be like, "Okay, I'm gonna stay sober. I'm gonna stay sober," and then I would just get right back into it. And so I went for. There was this time that I actually wanted to go to Houston. And that was my cousin had invited me to go out there to try to help me because he saw I was struggling a lot. And so he said, "Hey, if there's something that you want in your life, I think a goal would help you." Right. My mom was reaching out to people because she knew that I was struggling a lot. And I went to a store with him because I said, well, maybe like a moped or a motorcycle would be awesome to like earn, money for and to get. And so he took me to a place and I saw this red like moped and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. And he goes, well, you come to Houston with me. You can mow lawns, you can do weed eating. I'll show you how, and we could earn money for that. And I really think this is going to help you. And so I went to his home for like 3 months that summer and I was sober, but I was miserable. And at one point, I did find a way to get drugs when I was out there for like a day, but most of the time, I was just miserable. I was constantly crying, angry. All those feelings were coming up. And so, anyway, I earned the money. I came back, and when my mom came to pick me up, which I've totally forgiven her for this, but she said, I didn't think you would actually do it, so you can't get the moped. And I was devastated because I worked the entire summer, and she went from saying yes to this to saying, well, I didn't think you would actually earn the money for it, so you can't have that. And so I was like, went from going up to all of a sudden I was crashing again. And I had all this money. So what did I do with it? I spent it on drugs and I went out on the streets again. So I keep going down this path. And then I was like, my friends told me, well, there was one guy at school that saw that I was in a really bad place. And he actually had gotten sober. And he's like, hey, I think you might have a problem. And I was like, no, I don't have a problem. I can quit alcohol or drugs anytime I want. And he's like, well, you know, I don't know. I can tell that you probably can't, you know. And I was like, no. And I was really offended with him. But he said, okay, you know what? I'll stop. But he said, if you could just go with me to a party, then, you know, we could hang out and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Maybe I'll go to a party with him. So I took my friend with me and he came to pick me up in his truck. And when we were riding, I was like, you know, I don't know where we're going, but you know, that's kind of how I lived my life. I would hitchhike and everything all over the place. And so a guy from school, I wasn't too worried about. But then he stopped his car in the middle like of this place downtown Austin, and I was like, "Oh crap, what did I get myself into?" We get out and he's like, there's an AA meeting over here that I was taking you to. So he tricked us to say it was a party so he can get us to go to AA. I was so mad. And I got out of the car, I got out of the truck, and I was like, I don't have a problem. I don't know why you would think that. So I had this in my head, right? So I go from there to like still doing, you know, getting back into the partying and stuff. And I tell my friend, you know, I don't want to do like all these drugs every time because sometimes I really feel out of control. So even though I had a love-hate relationship with the drugs and alcohol, I did it to survive and to try to numb myself, but I didn't like how out of control I felt. So I told her and she was like, "Look, you'll be fine. And besides, you've been so angry when you've been trying to stay sober. So we'd actually prefer you to be high or on alcohol because you're so angry when you're not." So I said, well, will you be with me? She goes, yes, I'll hold your hand the whole time. We found a new dealer. This is a new drug. You know, he's from the streets. We're gonna get that from him. And I was like, I don't know anything about it. And she was like, no, but you know, it should be good. You know, we're gonna try it. So we come to that party day, and I was like, all right, she's gonna hold my hand. She told me over and over again, she's not gonna let anything happen to me. So we get to the party, we all, you know, we all take the drug, and then I noticed that she's over on the floor laughing, and she's like totally unable to help me at all, right? And I suddenly start seeing stuff and going into the drugs, and I'm like, wow, I'm completely alone and freaked out. And I noticed that the drugs I'm not starting to go down from them. So we're going up to like 24 hours and my friends are like, they're getting better, but I'm not. And they're like, you should be sober, like getting sober at this point. And I was like, I'm not. And so I go into 48 hours, I'm still high from whatever I took. And I go home and I was like, because they were like, you should probably go home because that's, you know, it's probably not good where you're at. So I go home and I'm still high. And at some point in the night, I decide to go on my skateboard downtown Austin, very high on whatever this is. And I get there and I stop my skateboard and I look up and I go, God, if you are real, I need you to help me. And once that happened, suddenly realized I'm where that guy dropped me off at for that AA meeting. So I look up and I go, oh my gosh, that's the AA meeting that he took us to. So I get off my skateboard, I go in and I tell them, like, I've been high, I can't get sober, I need help. And they welcomed me in. And, you know, I was the youngest one there. And they were like, you know, just keep coming back. And that's when my venture with AA started. And that was the last time that I actually drank or used drugs. And that was a total miracle because I was like, God, I can't get sober. I came in like weeks and weeks shaking, having the tremors, couldn't, you know, function. But I was like, I got to keep coming back because I felt like there was some hope there, you know, that there could be, that I could be free from this. And in the middle of that, I was like, God, I want to know who you really are. Because my dad was Muslim, my mom was backsliding Christian, my brother was Buddhist, my sister was Catholic, my other brother was atheist. Like there was not like I was so confused. Like, who is God? Like I want to know who he really is. And I've been searching. So I prayed. I was like, God, whoever you are, I need to know. And I also need you to help me find a sponsor. So this one day I was sitting in an AA meeting and this lady was sitting there and she looked like she was glowing. Like she had this peace on her every time she talked. And I was like, I want what she has. So I came to her and asked her if she would be my sponsor. And she was like, well, I'll think about it. And she told me later she didn't think I was going to make it. So she wasn't even considering me at the time. But she saw me, like I was started getting like like I would pray wherever I was at. So I was totally unashamed. I was like, I'm so desperate to get sober and know God. So she saw me praying in a parking lot. Um, and when she saw me, she was like, okay, this girl means business. I think she's going to make it. I'm going to be her sponsor. So she told me yes. Like this was like maybe a couple of weeks later. She told me, I'll be your sponsor. And as she was leading me through steps and dealing with all this stuff that's coming up, as because we know when you're drinking and you're using drugs and the witchcraft, all of it's a distraction from what's really going on in your heart and your mind. And so she was talking me through this, and she's like, there's this, and she goes, the only thing that's going to set you free from that fear is Jesus. And I was like, I was like, I wasn't totally on board at first. So I was like, well, I'm going to think about that. And I started like going, okay, God, is this you? I want to know because other people in AA are saying it could be this, it could be that. So I get on the bus one day and this lady with long blonde hair and a white dress comes and approaches me and she starts asking me if I know who God is and what I think about God. And I was like, well, I don't know. I heard about Jesus, but I don't know. And I hear about these other things. She goes, well, just, keep thinking about it. And she started telling me some stuff about the Bible. Well, I looked around when we were talking and nobody seemed to notice us, but I was like, this lady has long blonde hair and this white flowy dress. This is just kind of odd the way she looked. And I was like, did anybody see her? And it felt like I was in a movie because it was just me and her talking and nobody would even look at her. And so I left that bus ride going, okay, well, maybe this is it. I'm going to keep searching, right? And so I'm like, hey, God, show me who you are. And then it seemed like Jesus was being talked about wherever I was at. And then I come back on the bus. This is like maybe a week or two later. I see the same lady in the white dress with the long blonde hair. And she's like, so what do you think? And I was like, well, I'm still thinking about it. She goes, well, this is who God is. And she's telling me about Jesus and she's telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe, right? I'm so stubborn that God's like, I'm sending you an angel. So I leave and I'm like, struggling still with things and I'm still at home. People are mad at me in my house for getting sober. Like they did not like that I got sober. I was no longer the party girl. And all of them had to, I basically was presenting like getting sober and stopping these things. And a lot of them were still doing it. So I think it was convicting for a lot of people in my family. So they were very angry. So I was really struggling. And then one day after hearing all this about Jesus, I was in a parking lot next to the AA meeting by my house. And I got on my knees and I said, God, okay, I think this is who you really are. And I was like, I accept that you died on the cross for me, that you rose again, and that you want to live in my heart. And I confess all my sins. I ask for you to give me a new start and that you would come and live in my heart with me and just help me. And I looked up and after I did that, the clouds kind of parted up in the sky. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I still remember it vividly when I looked up. So I told my sponsor and she was so excited. She's like, that means you're gonna be my sister in Christ and you could be a part of my group. And she had like a Bible study and everything. So I get on the bus again right after this happens, and that same lady finds me, right? The blonde hair, the white dress. And I said, guess what? I decided to say yes to Jesus. And she was like, I'm so excited for you. She goes, I want to give you this Bible. And she started telling me, you need to read this. You need to read the Bible every day. This is what tells you about the gospel and then she left and I was so excited and I never saw her again. And I've been riding the bus for years before then and after. And then I never saw her. And I was like, I know in my heart that that was an angel the Lord sent me. And I tell people I was so stubborn, God had to send me an angel to get me saved. So I went from there to um, going to, Bible studies and I got baptized. And the rest of it is, I basically had a new life, a new start. And I don't know how far you want me to go into this, but I did become a missionary eventually after getting saved.
Tell me about the missionary.
Yeah, so God had been putting on my heart after I got saved that He wanted me to do missionary work, and I was super afraid of doing missionary work. I did not want to do it. It was not something I was looking forward to. But out of obedience, I went to Venezuela. I found it in a magazine, and I was like, oh, well, this is the one that He was highlighting to me. So I was like, okay, I'll go there. So I went there, and I thought my adventure was done, right? I went to Venezuela. I got to lead this little girl to Jesus. Like she was probably like 8. And then I was like done, right? It was like a week and I was like, okay, well, I obeyed the Lord. We're done. And then somebody that I knew went to YWAM, which is called Youth with a Mission. And it's a missionary organization that's all over the world, basically. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go. But then I was like, okay, maybe this is where God is leading me. So I ended up quitting. I had already graduated at this point, and I quit my job and everything. And the church I was going to paid for me to go. They paid for me to go to Venezuela. I started getting support to go to YWAM. So I ended up getting the money, and I went to YWAM, and that's actually where I met my husband. God had to set me free from a lot of stuff still, because there was still a lot. I was going through counseling and stuff too to deal with things. This is in my book. I don't know if you got to this part, but I was trying to leave a man to the Lord after I got saved. And the Holy Spirit was like, don't go with him. I felt it in my heart. You know, when you can tell like God is saying, don't do something. And I still was like, well, I'm still going to go with him. And he was at the bus stop with me and he was like, well, I don't know. I need to go to this other bus stop and you could talk to me as we're walking. And instead of staying at the bus stop, I walked with this strange man, right? He's a lot older than me, walked with him and I'm sharing the gospel with him as we're going. And as we keep going, I keep feeling this like the Holy Spirit, like, don't keep going with this guy, right? Don't go. And I was like, but I need to tell him about Jesus. You know, I was like on fire, but I was not the wisest. So as we got further, I started separating myself a little bit from him. So I wasn't right next to him anymore. I was kind of keeping my distance. When we get to the bus stop, it's totally like dark. There's nobody around. And he comes from behind me and he says, I have a knife. I'm going to kill you. He said something like that. And I was like, oh crap. And so I was like, Jesus. So I just whispered it and I fell down like because he was ready. Like I could feel like him jabbing me with something, right? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so as I fell down, all of a sudden I look up and he's running. And I'm like, what just happened? And I believe that there's something supernatural happened. I believe that there was an angel or something that freaked him out because there was nobody around. And it was like a little scream, like, Jesus, like, and he did not even look back at me. And I know that was a miracle because he could have easily killed me right there. He could have done anything. And when I did report it to the police, he was a known rapist. And so the fact that nothing happened to me was a huge miracle. But right after that is when I went to YWAM. So I still had a lot of trauma from that and trauma from the growing up and all these things that had happened to me because I had gotten kidnapped for it was a short time. I had to jump out of a car about I don't know, that was maybe like a year before that. So I go into YWAM pretty broken and God is having to deal with stuff in my heart and all the trauma I've gone through. So during that whole process, God was bringing this stuff up through leaders and different people praying for me. And I met my husband, but we didn't actually get married until after my third school. I did a school of evangelism, a discipleship training school, school of evangelism, and then I did a school of performing arts. So we actually got engaged before my school of performing arts. And so as engaged couple, we were going to Hollywood and dance. I was a dancer. And so I would do dances and stuff, and we would talk about Jesus to people on the streets. And eventually we got married there and had our first 2 kids. And we actually moved out to Virginia when I was pregnant with my third. And I was like 8 months pregnant. So it was a little crazy. But yeah, it's been a crazy adventure. And that's kind of like you go up to date with everything that's happened. I got delivered from a lot of that stuff about 2.5 years ago. I went through Deliverance to get some of these things that were still tormenting me because I had already accepted Jesus. I already knew who God was. I'd already gone through counseling. I've already forgiven people. I had to forgive like all the time, forgive, the abusers, forgive the guy that tried to kill me, forgive the other guy that tried to take me out, and then just forgive like all the rejection, all these different things. But whenever I got to like, whenever I got to like 2.5 years ago, like I said, I had been having thoughts that were not good. I still had dark thoughts. I still felt like afraid of a lot of things. I'm overcoming still hypochondria because I always thought something was wrong with me. And anyway, so I went there and this couple did deliverance on me and found out that it wasn't that I was possessed by demons or Satan. It was that I was oppressed. So they were constantly putting thoughts in my head and constantly putting these things in me that was not really me, right? I had so we casted a lot of stuff out, and after that, that's when things really started changing and how I thought. I had more peace in my mind because it wasn't consumed by all this demonic stuff, and I had to close doors that I had opened whenever I was in the occult because I had opened wide these doors. I mean, literally gave myself to Satan. So there was obviously a lot of doors that were open in my life. So we closed those doors. I really forgave all the people that have hurt me 100%. And even up to things that had happened even a few years ago of rejection and stuff from friends. And so once that happened, it's not like I'm perfect now, but there's a level of freedom that I have even to share my story because then I was able to write this book that I was ashamed of before. So God took all the shame away, all the tormenting fear away, and opened this door. And I knew this was his timing of me doing this book right now because it's a way that I could tell people that God can set you free no matter how dark and hard things get. Um, and just to put that out there also, I was able to lead my dad to the Lord 4 years ago, my brother and my sister. So things took a total like what had been a place where they were angry and upset with me. God got it to a point where they wanted what I had and they knew it was real and it wasn't a phase. And so that was a complete change in our whole family and my dad passed away like 2 months after I led him to the Lord. And he took the COVID vaccine and his body shut down from that. And so I knew God's timing of me leading him, praying with him was totally, his timing because he wanted him to get saved before he passed away. So God has a way of taking these really dark things in our life if we're willing to surrender them and change them and turn them around to not even just how they could be, but even better. Because I could not have imagined the kind of stuff that God has for me now versus, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, like things were so bad in my life. And now there's like this freedom and I can share with people and he's given me ways to do that. And my life, I feel like is so much better and like it's thriving, but it's all because of Jesus. So
So
that's,
let me ask you a couple of questions.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, you and I have a similar background in family. Okay. Um, the abuse that you went through from the ages of 3 to 12.
hmm
Did you tell anybody about this, or did you keep it all to yourself?
I kept it to myself until the last couple of years. And then I told my sister about it. But yeah, it was kind of a hidden thing. It felt very shameful. And so I didn't want anyone else to know about it. And then I didn't want to get the people in trouble that had done it. And so,
Did you struggle with the fact that if you told somebody, they wouldn't believe you?
yes, definitely. Because our family had a lot of denial in it. Didn't want to acknowledge stuff that was happening. We really wanted everybody to think the best, like we were this good American family, and to say something about that would have like they made it sound like it would devastate the entire family and reputation was a big deal to my family, and so even being open about that was very hard because I didn't want to shame the family. And even now, like I share stuff, but I won't share like who did what because I want to protect their reputation, but in a way that I feel like is godly because I don't want to put all their stuff out there because this is my story. So I tell people it's like I won't reveal who it was, but it was somebody in our family and just to honor them. But yeah, that's what the shame was though, because you want to keep it inside.
Did you feel did you feel guilty that maybe you had caused this?
Yes. Yeah. Because I felt like maybe because I was pretty or something like that, that it was my fault. But that was like, as you know, a little girl, I was like, well, maybe this is me, because yeah. But later I realized it wasn't. I mean, it was just their struggles, their the things that they were going through, and it didn't have anything to do with me. But that took a very long time to realize that.
What happened when you finally shared what was going on to your sister?
She was she was angry. She was hurt. Like, she did not like that that happened to me, and I was protective of the person. So I mean, she was just like, yeah. So she wanted to do everything she could to try to protect me. She's a lot older than me, so she's kind of like a second mom.
Then what caused you to reach out into the dark world? I mean, were you, like the song says, looking for love in all the wrong places?
Yes. I was I was looking for something. I was looking for a big distraction, I think. And then to feel like I was worth something. I felt like I had no value. Everywhere I went, I felt like everybody was better than me. And I felt like if they knew what I went through, or if they knew the things going on, I'd be ostracized. Everybody would hate me. And so, yeah, I think the darkness, I mean, it was like, it was that temptation that was right here waiting for me, but it was really the acceptance. What first got me into it was the acceptance that they were offering me, that all my normal friends, normal, weren't offering me. They would they were there for me. Like, I mean, I had a friend that was there for me and stuff that was not like in the popular group, but most of the time I felt like I just was on the outside because I didn't know all the things that she did. Like, I felt like I didn't learn how to do basic skills. Like, I didn't know about like which fork to use. I didn't know how to floss my teeth right. Like, I was the baby in the family, and and it's not to shame my parents. I mean, I know that there's a lot going on, but I just felt like I was always less than. And so when you find a group that actually is like, we don't care what anyone else thinks about you. Welcome into our group. That's how those girls first got me. Is they're like, we don't care what the popular kids say about you. We don't care what they say about you. We accept you. And that was what initially got me into the darkness. And then all of a sudden I'm like following what they do because I'm so desperate to be loved and accepted. If they're telling me, hey, go do this. I'm like, okay, as long as I could still stay with you guys, as long as you still love me and accept me, I'll do what you guys are doing. I think the only thing I didn't do was that heroin and cocaine with them. I did other things and snorted other things, but I pretended to like candy a lot, so I would that was, oh, she's the candy girl. And that was before I got into the like other drugs and stuff in high school. But yeah, I'd say that it was the acceptance and love that they offered that drew me into the darkness.
So, at that particular time in your life, you had no confidence in yourself.
Oh no. No, I didn't. I struggled with knowing if what I thought was reality, because so many people were like, that's not true. That's not. I was like, well, I felt like I felt really stupid in my family because like my brothers and my sister, they were like engineers. My dad was an engineer. My sister was like CPA. They had these big dreams. My other brother knows like 10 languages. So I I was like, I could dance. I could do art, but that's not the same level. So sometimes I would just feel like my thoughts of reality didn't feel like they were as valuable as everyone else because I didn't feel like I was as smart as everyone else. And God had to break that lie off of me and like, no, you are smart. Maybe it's not as an engineer, maybe it's not as an accountant, but I'm intelligent in a different way. And I have gifts that God's given me that make me uniquely me. And I don't have to compete with all the other people, if that makes sense.
So, you felt like an outsider with your own family?
I did. I felt like the black sheep of the family.
Okay. Did you feel love from your parents?
I did in some ways. Like, my mom hugged me a lot and she would tell me she loved me. My dad would buy me stuff. That was how he showed me love. So whatever I asked for, so physically I was taken care of. I would get like the nicest clothes. I would tell like my mom worked a second job just to be able to give me the things I wanted. So in some ways, I mean, my siblings, I don't think had that really. It was more me because I was the baby in the family. So I would get like, Dad, I want to get this, on our way home. He's like, okay, I need money. Okay. He's just always like, whatever you want. And so, in that way, I felt loved, or by my mom's hugs. So there were some ways that it was met, but I think because of the abuse, that would left a huge hole in my heart. And I needed more than just the hugs or the bind me stuff, if that makes sense.
So the abuse that you went through from 3 to 12
Yeah.
really left a pretty deep scar.
Oh yeah,
And
it
so
did.
in school, um, what did this group of girls that you started hanging out with, what did they do to make you feel good about yourself?
Uh, I'd say one of the big things is that they went through abuse themselves. So we kind of connected in a negative way with that because they were abused. So we kind of shared that in common. And then they would, you know, if I was going to be alone or something, they'd be like, come with us. Come hang out with us, or we're going to this together. And I didn't have to earn it. Like with that popular group, I had to do X, Y, and Z to even be invited to their party. Like I had to go out with the guy Max in order to even be invited to their party. They didn't want anything to do with me unless I changed myself. Like, unless I said, I'll go out with this guy or I'll do this or you know this I did start changing who I was with these other girls. Like I started dyeing my hair. I did like skateboarding. I found out I do like skateboarding, but I started doing stuff like that as just kind of a natural thing. I started just trying new stuff. But with the other group, it was like you can't come in the door unless you do this, this, and this.
So did you really feel accepted?
No. I did not because actually I found out those two girls that I started hanging out with started talking bad about me and betraying me. And so it's just how Satan works. Oh, I'm gonna love you, I'm gonna accept you. And then they turn their back on me. At one point, they started getting jealous of some of the attention I was getting from some of the guys that they thought were cute or different things. And I think we're jealous of, our finances. My dad, like I said, he was an engineer. We had a decent amount of money. And I think there was some of that going on. So they started, telling people when I said things. There's one girl that started trying to get in a fight with me because I talked about her to them and they betrayed my trust and told her. So it wasn't really a healthy friendship, but I was very desperate. And so I kept trying really hard to get them to still like me after they invited me in originally. It was more like now you have to keep up. So it actually wasn't a lot different than those other girls and guys, but I was accepted in initially, but then it's like I felt like I had to keep up in order to stay in. And even when they betrayed me, I still was trying my hardest to be accepted and part of their group.
What took you to the doorway of thinking about suicide?
Uh, I think it was all the rejection I was feeling. And like I said, the pain of all the abuse that I had gone through and feeling constantly like I wasn't enough. And I tried with pills and my friend found out about it. And that was kind of a hard thing because I realized like, oh my gosh, like people know. And the self-hate was so strong. Like I said, I used to cut and was very, very into that. And that was just like this, I hated myself. So I think the suicide was just like because of all the rejection I felt, I was like, I was rejecting myself too. I was like, well, I'm not good enough. I don't belong here. Nobody wants me. And those were the kind of things like I almost like I was invisible, like nobody would know if I was gone and nobody would care like if I was gone. That's kind of the thought patterns that I got into eventually.
Yeah, when I was 16, I ended up sitting on a ledge in a hotel because I was adopted. And when I was 16, my adopted mother decided I could no longer live in her house. So I was left on a street corner with a suitcase.
Oh
And
my gosh.
And so, You know, I had to make a decision on that ledge whether I would live or die. And I decided if I jumped, my mother would win, and I wasn't going to let her achieve that.
Wow.
You made a statement that you either couldn't or you wouldn't admit you had a problem.
Yeah.
What was the wake up call where you were willing to say, I have a problem?
I think whenever I wouldn't come off of those last drugs, because all of a sudden I'm like, I might be drugged up forever and I can't physically get out of this. And so that was the biggest wake up call was right then. I started having a little bit of it before whenever I was trying to earn money for that moped. And I was so angry and crying and was not functioning well. And I couldn't be sober. Like at that point, I was like, I can't function. And I think that was a little bit of that wake up call. But the biggest one, like I said, was when I wouldn't come down from those drugs. I was like, I need help and only God can help me. Even though I didn't know who he was, I knew that there was something. Because I would even pray when I was 6, like, God, I don't know who you are, but help me. That was my big prayer.
Your husband must be a very unique man.
Yeah.
How long did he know you before you told him about your background?
Uh, I didn't really tell him stuff at first. It was more like I was constantly praying and crying out and asking God to help me. When we were even together on dates, or even wasn't a date, like we were friends, right? I would be over there like, God, I do this, I forgive, and blah, blah, blah. And he'd be like, I don't know if I should be in the car at this moment. And so he's like, and God would be like, stay in the car, you know? And so it was pretty, like when I went into more details, that was probably more when we were engaged. He didn't know everything. Some of the stuff he didn't know until after we were married. I didn't even tell some of my closest friends in YWAM. Like they saw my book and they're like, we didn't even know your story. And we had been traveling all over the United States together and for years. And I would even be like, almost pretending I grew up in the church to my friends, like, oh, you must have grown up in the church. I'd be like, yeah, like, yeah. And so I was not really open with a lot of things. I mean, I like said, it was a little bit at a time that he found out stuff, but like the really hardcore witchcraft, I mean, we'd already been married for a while before he knew some of that harder stuff. Just because I was very ashamed of sharing all that with people. And I didn't, I think part of me did not want to lose him, you know, because of my past. He grew up in the church and he's like, I grew up that knowing that 1 + 1 is 2 and Jesus loves me. Like he became a Christian when he was a little kid. It was only him and his brother and his parents, you know, really strong Christians. And he went to youth camp growing up. So to meet me, it was kind of this, you know, I had prayed that God would pick out my husband, and he definitely picked him out because I wouldn't have naturally chosen him. I would have chosen somebody that probably been had a lot more of a past. And I'm really thankful that God picked him out and that he allowed us to be together because he's been such a support and healing for me, even how I see men and the whole process of going everything I've gone through.
Okay, I got one final question for you.
Okay.
You ready? The Bible talks to us a lot about old nature and new nature,
Yeah.
and that the old nature is when we're living from the outside in, and we become in the world, not of the world.
Hmm.
When you were growing up, you were definitely in the world, and the world was controlling you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you found Christ, it was like you stepped away from the outside and you stepped to the inside and the new nature that God gives us whenever we accept Him.
Right.
But even though we step into the new nature, the old you never really goes away.
Right.
And are there still times when you struggle?
Yes. Yeah, because I have to make a choice. Like, if I'm going to, I think the big thing, if I'm going to walk in fear or if I'm going to walk in faith, the biggest struggle I've had in my flesh versus, the spirit is that if I get in control of things, I start freaking out. And I don't know how, like, everybody has a different way of dealing with like living that way. Like, if you're going to feed your flesh or feed the spirit. And I have to make a choice that I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust his nature. I'm going to trust that he's good, that he's a good father, and that he loves me, and that he has good plans for me. And he's not bringing me into places where his motive is to hurt me, but that he wants to help me. And so I have to make a decision to not walk in fear. I have to make a decision that I'm going to walk in faith, because it's almost like these two things, like you're saying, it's like two different ways that I could walk. My old person would be afraid of everything, and the new person is bold and faith-filled and at peace. And so when I make a choice, I mean, these are little things, but am I going to get on my phone first thing in the morning, or am I going to go have a quiet time? Those are like the little steps that I make. And when I make the choice to put my phone second and go into my RV and have a quiet time, my whole day is different. And so, but it is a choice. I have to sometimes even plug my phone in the closet to be able to not go straight to my phone, because that feeds fear a lot of times. The kind of stuff you see online can feed that. And so, yeah, it's a daily choice. But it does get easier. I'm not nearly as afraid as I used to be, and God is renewing me and helping me walk as a new creation when I make those choices.
One of the things that I believe is that fear is a natural part of life.
Hmm.
And God gave us fear as an emotion to slow us down.
Yeah,
But when we don't slow it down and we speed up because of the fear, then that fear turns to being afraid. And that's when we're open to the attacks from the old you, the old nature.
right.
Is it challenging sometimes to, because in the past you didn't manage your life was managing you.
Yeah.
And is it challenging sometimes to slow your life down so you can breathe?
Yes. Yes, because God told me, okay, this is funny. I was having a quiet time and he said, Annetta, you don't have to always be Tigger from, like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh that was always like jumping around and hyper and all this stuff. Sometimes he's like, sometimes you can just rest in me and you don't have to constantly be jumping around and doing stuff. Because sometimes even good things, I can be like, run ahead and be like, whoa, and it's so exciting. And he made me a certain way, like who I am right now. This is who I am. I tried to put mask on before, and finally he showed me this is who you are. This is how I've made you. But yeah, he has to sometimes slow me down. Sometimes I've gotten sick, and that's the only way that I've rested. So he's trying to get me to a point where, in a healthy way, I need to sometimes breathe and step back and not go 100 miles per hour all the time. I have to say no to things sometimes that I would normally be like, okay, I'll do it, whatever, And I was like, okay, I can't do everything. I'm still human and I need to take a break sometimes.
So if someone would like to get a copy of your book,
Yeah.
how would they find it?
It's on Amazon. It's also on Barnes and Nobles. And yeah, so it's like I appreciate it. Caught. Um, and it's actually on sale right now on Amazon on Kindle for 99 cents for the next week. And I'm working on an audiobook, so that'll eventually be out. But for now, if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free for a while. But if you don't have Kindle Unlimited for 99 cents for this week, or Barnes and Nobles, you can get it there too. And I have hard copies at both places for 24.99.
So if I'm a young person, and because I think young people today are under attack. I think adults are too. But I think Satan is working overtime today with young people.
Yeah.
So if someone just wanted to reach out and maybe send you an email, how would they reach you?
I have a website. It's ftfministries.org. They can get on there to reach out to me, Or they could reach out to me in my email, AnnettaFCaldwell@gmail.com, and just reach out and I could be praying for you or whatever you need. Because I do believe you're right. I believe they're under attack. And I believe witchcraft and all the dark things have been glamorized. So people think it's kind of fun and exciting. And these doors start getting open. And Ouija boards, some of the things, dark things that are happening online, and people think it's cool. And especially like teenagers and young adults think that this is a cool thing to walk in. And some of them are even looking for power. And I would just challenge them to actually look for power in Jesus. He's above all the darkness and he's more powerful than Satan. And he loves you and Satan hates you. So you'd rather be with somebody that loves you and has the best in mind for you because Satan will eventually turn his back on you. He'll eventually say that he's going to offer you all these things and he will literally throw you to the wolves. So, I would say if you want to reach out, please do. And like I said, I can be praying for you and, God can shut doors that you've opened no matter how dark they've gotten.
Okay, I want you to slow down because you're like a lot of people when you start giving information, sometimes you speed up. So your website is,
FTFministries.org.
okay, and your email address?
It's my name, so it's Annetta, Annetta, and then F like Frank, and then Caldwell, Caldwell @gmail.com.
Okay, thank you
Yeah,
for being with me today, and thank you for sharing your story. Uh, because I believe I, I believe Satan is more active today in the world than I think we've ever seen him.
yeah,
And most people don't understand when you and I live outside in, the world owns us.
yeah,
And when we live inside out, then we live through our belief, our trust, and our faith in God.
yeah.
And I'm happy that you're where you are today. I'm glad and happy that you're the person you are. And
Thank
so,
you.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on here.